Hey guys, welcome back to another weekly developer diary. So I've got a few things to just talk about what I've done this week. So first of all, I did a bit of research into some different moral dilemmas to do for like some different story beats. So the first one I looked at quite a few, and these are just couple that caught my attention or I thought would work quite well as some story beats. So the first one is basically if say a character has a loved one like a partner or a child and they're gravely ill and they're gonna die unless they get some sort of treatment. If they can't afford the medicine, is it okay for them to either steal the medicine or steal money in order to be able to afford that medicine? Because then they're committing a crime and something that's obviously considered bad in stealing. However, they're doing it for like a good motive or cause, being that they're saving someone's life. So, is it does the is it right for them to do that? And if they are say stealing off someone, what burden would that put on them? What if they stole off someone then they couldn't afford something like crucial? So I thought that was an interesting one. So it's sort of, does the good in saving someone's life outweigh the bad of stealing from someone else? And then some of the things were like, what if they had to, kill someone in order to get the medicine? Which I don't think I go that far with that first one, but it's still an idea. Another one that caught my attention was the Mad Bomber scenario, which is essentially, I think the way I'd incorporate this would be like some sort of, like it either could be explosives or maybe like a evil warlock or wizard has placed runes all over the city that are going to explode at say sunset. So basically this one is, if you've captured someone who has placed bombs across like a populated area and they're not going to tell you where, is it morally right for you to torture them in order to find the location of the bombs and ultimately save lives? And if you do torture them and they don't say anything, then what extremes would you go to in order to try and save those lives? So say it's a city that's, too big to evacuate in time and the culprit isn't talking, what lengths could they go to? Is it morally right for them to torture them? What if, they have a innocent wife or family member? Is it okay to torture them, even though they're innocent, if that is the thing that'll get them to talk? So, like, how far do you go until it's too far, in a way? I thought that was an interesting one. So them two I just got by like doing some research, and this one I just sort of thought up of, which I quite like the idea of this one, which is, say the player finds someone injured and starts treating them, and then while they're treating them, they learn that that person is a criminal or they've murdered someone. Is it morally right? Does a like murderer deserve to be treated and have their life saved, even though they've taken someone else's life? So should the is it does should the player just leave them to die because they've killed someone, or should they save them because they shouldn't decide who lives and dies? Like, what gives them the right to choose whether they live or die? As well as, if they did let them die, is that akin to them basically murdering them because they're denying them the treatment? Or I feel like there's a lot of different elements and roads I could take this down. It could be, what if it was someone that was falsely accused? Then if you just left them to die, thinking they were a murderer, then you've just essentially killed an innocent person. Or I think one idea I quite like is, if you treated a murderer or a criminal and then they went on to attack someone else, would the player in that scenario be partially responsible because they enabled that, they treated them, and then because they've now been treated, they're able to commit more crimes. So I thought that was an interesting one because there's a lot of different ways it could go. It could be, you leave them to die and you've essentially murdered a murderer because you don't believe they deserve to live. Or if they're innocent, then you've essentially let an innocent man die. Or if they reoffend after you've treated them, are you partially responsible for that? So there's a lot of different ideas I could take that, and I quite like that one. So another thing I did just today in the past hour or two is I made this little sad sounding piano melody that I'll just play real quick. Oh, Jesus. Oh, that's a little loud. Sorry about that. Didn't realise I was on max volume. That scared me a bit. Anyway, there we go. That's it. Again, sorry for the little scare that made me jump a bit, but I thought that'd sound quite good as maybe like just like a sad melody in the game. Maybe tragic events just happen, or just like maybe like a death melody. It's quite short, unless I build upon it and make it like a proper sad like sounding song. So I'm quite happy with how this has turned out so far. With lo- these very like long chords with it's sort of structured so there's these long chords and then it's followed up by two more notes. So it goes like these three going dum, and then these two come with a dum dum. I think that works quite well. Like I could see myself just cutting it here and that just being a little death melody. I think that sounds quite good. So yeah, I've just been doing a little bit of just messing around with FL Studio in the past week. And for the final thing to talk about is oh no, two things, sorry. I've started working on a map of like the continent or region that the game will take place in. So it's only just very rough at the moment, just pencil on paper, but it's a start, which is more than I had last week. So I'm working on that, on just like a map of the area, because as I nail down these story elements, I want to be doing the map so I can sort of be like, okay, chapter one takes place, say, in the player's hometown. This is the reason they player leaves, and then on the map, I want to map out the route of the story. So, like, where does the player go from here? Did they go to this city? And then they go to, say, an island, for example. I just want to map out, like, the route of where the story will take the player. And then the final thing is we've received what our assessment is going to be. Because we knew our assessment for this current teaching block was going to be to make free mechanics. We've now been told what the free mechanics are. So the first one is to make a wave system that spawns a variety of enemies that act differently. So for example, a wave system that could spawn different enemies such as a enemy that wanders around randomly. This is on a like 2D overhead view, but it could spawn different enemies such as an enemy that wanders around aimlessly, an enemy that chases the player, an enemy that chases the player up to a certain distance and then starts shooting at the player, enemies that spawn other enemies, enemies that upon death burst into other enemies, enemies that may go up to the player and explode, enemies that might run away from the player, enemies with shields. There's a lot of different ways you could take that in just like enemy variety. So you'd have to make a wave system so that it spawns a certain amount of them in like certain positions, and then once they've all spawned, the wave is considered ended, and then a new wave begins that spawn more enemies. So that's the first mechanic. Second mechanic is networking, so essentially making a game multiplayer. So to make it so it can be either cooperative or competitive, but to make a game so that essentially, well, we all know what multiplayer is. When something happens on one screen, it simultaneously happens on another, on the other player's version of the game. So, and then the third mechanic is to make a system that allows you to upgrade ability or have abilities and then upgrade said abilities. So, for example, say the player can shoot enemies, maybe have an upgrade that turns their shot into a shotgun, or it makes it so you can have a charge shot, or a shot that slows, maybe a shot that homes in on enemies, or a shot that bounces off enemies, or does like burn damage. So there's a lot of different things you could do with that one as well. So as far as the three mechanics go, I think my ordering of like which one I'm leaning towards, because you have to do one of the three, is the wave system, followed by the ability upgrade system, and then the networking one. I'm not keen on the networking one just because I've not done any networking stuff before. So that's something I would like to look into in my free time. However, it was not something I'd first want to attempt at my assessment, just because I've not done it before. Whereas the other two, I've done a little bit of stuff related to them before. Like in Evolve, for example, we had a wave-based system that spawned different enemy types. And then we also had an upgrade system, funnily enough. So two of those mechanics we've somewhat done before, albeit at quite a basic level. So, and then the upgrade system, I think I could do that fairly well. However, I am leaning towards the wave-based system with different enemy types, because I think it'd be quite interesting to be able to make quite a bit of like different acting AI, as well as I don't think a wave-based system would be that complex to implement. But the assessment isn't just implementing it, it is basically doing like an analysis on what's the best way to do it. So we'd have to basically try and find the most efficient way to do it and explain why, or why a certain way wouldn't work correctly, or what the issues with a certain method of doing it would be. So, all in all, that assessment doesn't sound too bad. As far as the coding goes, doesn't sound too bad. I'm just hoping I can actually get my analysis and writing of it done quite well. So that's everything for this week. For the coming week, I'll probably do a bit of messing around in FL Studio and Sprite, as well as I want to get more of my feasibility study done. Just like, say, a draft to just give my tutor. And finally, for next week, I want to get a bit more of the world map for my project game done. So that's everything for this week, guys. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next week. Alright, peace.